Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman, and today we're going to revisit the Joel test. For those of you who are older developers or managers and whatnot, the Joel test is a blog post from Joel Splodinsky from 2000 where he lays out a very simple 12-question test to see if your software development team is set up for success. And in the early aughts, that was the de facto thing that people would ask about. Like you would go to an interview, you could ask the question, and managers would know what you were talking about. It was known. It was in the people just knew about it.
Okay.
And it's been almost 25 years, and I thought, hey, let's look at that because I haven't heard about anybody talking about it recently. And by recently, I mean like a decade or more. Let's look at it, see how it holds up, and if there's anything that should in a revised version that would come off or go on. And so let's go through it.
That sounds good.
Yeah. All right. So question number one: do you use source control? I
Hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. In 2000, I certainly encountered many places that did not use source control. Even as far as 2008, I think was the last time I saw a place that didn't have everything in source control.
For me, it was probably 2000, around 2008, because I remember using Adobe Dreamweaver to FTP new code to the server. And that's how I did it.
I have done that with Front Page. I certainly did that early on with PHP. It's just, you got the code on your computer and then you FTP it up to the server and then it's there. And that's how that goes.
It worked fine until it didn't.
Yes, it did. It worked fine until it didn't. I think this is maybe now so common that it's not controversial enough to even discuss anymore. But certainly, if you aren't using source control, you are not setting your development teams up for success. Can you make a build in one step? So I think the phrasing of this is a little dated, but he's asking, can you, from the source code, can you build the deployment objects in one step? And I think, well, I don't. Almost everyone I know uses continuous, they use a continuous build system, and that will build the objects. And so the question then becomes like, how would you? The second half of this is, do you have it so that it would, a single script, a single action that would get whatever the artifacts are off the build server, and set it up for deployment. The question is more about automated deploys than anything else.
Right. Yeah, because I like the way you phrase it, because technically it could be many steps, many tiny steps that make up the build and for your artifacts for deployment, which is kind of like what it's what we see every day if you look at a Docker file and see all the different steps. But in this sense, it's just more of, is there one action, like you mentioned, that will kick it off to build everything?
Right. And I think most places, certainly any place I've worked at in the last 15 years, everything, they had a continuous integration server, and that would build the artifacts. And they may or may not have one step to go from here's the build artifact to let's release this into production. So I think it's still an interesting thing because part of it was also the more steps you have to build and release, the more likely it is that things are going to get messed up.
Makes sense.
So number 3, do you make daily builds? So this one is clearly dated. He doesn't really want daily builds. He wants continuous integration. But this is, I think, 8 years before the word continuous integration was coined.
Right, because I remember the the idea of daily releases kind of got more popularized by that. What was the Phoenix Project book, I think? That talked more about that continuous release cycle and not just having a big deployment of something, like releasing once it's ready.
No, I think the Phoenix cycle was the DevOps.
Yeah, similar.
But anyway, yes,
Same concept. Yeah.
similar concept. Like the continuous. So the Joel test is from before continuous integration, continuous releasing.
Right.
Most software at this point, almost all software at this point, was installed.
Mm-hmm.
Right, there were no SaaS wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
So it was you're going to build the software and then package it up, and it might still literally be on a CD and ship a physical box to people. And
Yeah, that's definitely a bit dated.
right, so they're
On-prem stuff.
on-prem, and so making daily builds was important because if you weren't going to ship a CD out, then maybe you didn't need to bother building it, and you'd have problems. And so this has become, do you have continuous integration? Would be the more modern version of this question. And I hope you do.
Okay, what's next?
Next. So number 4, do you have a bug database?
Ooh, that's a good
Again,
one.
this is written in like 2000. Joel wrote one of the first bug tracking software, fog bugs. This is before Jira existed.
Mm-hmm.
In his statement was, if you don't have some formal way of tracking bugs, you will lose the bugs. So he's saying, not an Excel spreadsheet of your bugs. Some piece of software with database capabilities. You can query it, you can look in the past, you can go forward. Today this would be, do you use Jira or something similar? Would be the modern equivalent.
Yeah, this kind of, he wasn't thinking this when he wrote this, but like what we were talking about recently with the categorization of different types of bugs to help you understand how to make the right or code the right things. Like if you're even in the right direction, are you working on the important bugs?
Right.
None of that's possible without, essentially a bug database to help you prioritize which ones to fix, which one's the most important. So I think that was, a pretty good item from that still stands the test of time from
Right, that definitely
2
stands the
decades.
test of time. All right. So number 5 is, I think, more controversial. I totally agree. But number 5, do you fix bugs before you write new code?
that is controversial.
Right. I totally agree. His argument is it's much cheaper to fix bugs as soon as you know that they exist than to sit on them for a while, write new code, and then go back and fix them, because the longer the longer a bug has existed, the less you're going to remember about how it got created in the first place, and the more likely it is to impact something else, which will cause knock-on effects. And so to him, fixing bugs before new code is cheaper and more efficient than continuing on to write new code.
Yeah, I think most teams have split that into either one team working on new features, other team working on maintenance, or backlog the bugs, or use the bug database to deprioritize some bugs as not as important or not worth the effort and the money that could come in from a new feature that could be developed. So yeah, I can see a lot of arguments calling
Right.
that
Well,
one.
I think that this is something that's maybe become more arguable over time, because at the time he was talking about mostly installed software that was shipped. And
Yeah,
so you
right.
don't have this trade-off that you have today where you can say, oh, well, there's a bug in this not very important piece of my system, or I can finish working on this feature that everyone on the system is going to use. And so you can have an argument of, oh, well, this feature is going to be used by like 90 million people a day, and this bug impacts 10 people a day.
Right.
In the installed software world, that's not a trade-off you can discuss, because you're like, well, are we going to fix this bug before we ship the software? Literally ship it? Then we
Totally.
should
That's a
fix
good
it
call out.
first.
Yeah.
Now we're within a continuous integration, continuous release, or nearly continuous release cycle. It's different. Things have shifted.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there was this argument, and this is just a quick digression. There
Yeah.
was an argument a little while back about uh, updates to video games, like
Mm-hmm.
what game that you bought versus what game that you currently have, because of all the different patches or expansions, such that the original game you bought is not even playable anymore. What rights do you have as a consumer to have access to that original game you built? And
Mm.
so there's a whole different like back in the day, like obviously in the 90s when we're going to the store and buying some Super Nintendo games, you've got your cartridge and that's it.
That's
It's
it.
not
It's not going
connecting
to
to
get
the
patched.
internet. It's not going to get patched. It has to work and has to be pretty bug free. So it's super thoroughly tested. But because of the internet and patching and all that in the, more recent age, you can release sloppy code and have it just
Mm-hmm.
patched. You can release absolute crap like No Man's Sky, the video game, popularly was terrible when it was released, and there was so much done to it. Now it's a great game, but you can do that. You can totally do that. You can release things that are not complete to people and say they're
Mm-hmm.
complete. So that's an interesting kind of paradigm shift from when he wrote these steps.
Right, especially with video games these days where you're actually going to ship a disc,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where, but you know that you can still patch it. Like, oh, well, the disc has to go gold and you have to make a bajillion copies of it and you have to stick them in boxes and you have to ship the boxes to stores by a certain date. But the software life cycle continues on. So
Right.
always, by the time that somebody opens the box and it puts a disc in their PlayStation or Xbox, they're way out of date. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know if does the Nintendo have physical media anymore? I don't
No.
have one.
Well, I mean, yeah. The Switch has like the tiny cartridge still. You can download it or you can use a cartridge. Some people still prefer to buy the cartridge because hey, you can resell it. If you just install the bought copy on your account, then you can't really resell it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Okay,
still there.
awesome. Okay, uh, so number 6, do you have an up-to-date schedule? Going very old school,
Mm-hmm.
in the Mythical Man Month, which is a 50-year-old book about computer programming that is shockingly about a third still relevant. They talk about projects don't get late at the end. Projects get late one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an up-to-date schedule, like, oh, well, this is where, we thought we were going to be on this track and we're only this far, so we're this late. But you can't get more than one day late every day, more or less. And so being honest, this is about being honest with your stakeholders and saying, hey, we thought we'd be almost done with this feature, but we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We're way behind the pace or we're way ahead of the pace. And whether or not that's updated and communicated and whether everyone knows about it.
Right. That's a good one still.
Yeah.
I think making sure that your timelines are accurate, that it's almost like the same thing with the Jira board. Like you basically move the tickets, make sure that no tickets are just hanging there, or if
Mm-hmm.
they're unblocked. You talk to people. There's constant communication over where your current status is.
Right. Yeah. This isn't the process observability question, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
does everyone know where you are objectively?
Yeah, this just helps people plan better if they know which things are almost close to completion or which ones are blocked and what
Right.
parts
Which ones haven't
delayed.
been started?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Number 7. Do you have a spec?
Is
So
it?
Joel is saying a formal spec or a semi-formal spec is very important, and you shouldn't start coding until you've written down what it is the thing that you're going to write should do.
I was going to ask: is that essentially acceptance criteria of
Right. This is
today?
not like a UML diagram where you've written out all the fields and the things.
Mm-hmm.
This is, hey, I've got this feature, and I'm going to write this feature, in modern parlance. I've got a Jira ticket, and it says make a feature so that we can show enter a new bill screen. Then somebody should write down, I'm going to create an enter the new bill form. It's going to have these elements on it, yada,
Mm-hmm.
yada, yada. We should make a mock-up
Right.
before we start coding. Because it's much, much cheaper to do these things, on paper and have agreement before you start.
That would make sense.
I'm actually somewhat ambivalent on this one
Mm.
because if you are in a iterative environment and you are doing continuous delivery, then for a lot of this stuff where it's not greenfield, right? If your feature is, hey, I'm going to change this form,
Mm-hmm.
then you could make one change, release it, like just one tiny incremental change, release it, discuss it, and then make the next incremental change. And then maybe you don't need a spec because you're keeping the thing open of saying, hey, I'm going to add this field to the new bill form, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to see what happens. And then maybe we don't want to add the next field that we talked about, put it on the list.
Sure. I guess now that also is a smaller scope. If it's just one thing that you're discussing versus like the entire form itself existing and what
Right.
fields it should have, you could see a spec or acceptance criteria being more useful. The larger the changes or the more mysterious the thing you're trying to build is.
Right. What I'm saying is, yeah, the modern technology, or modern, no, it's not the technology, it's the modern processes with a
Mm-hmm.
continuous integration and continuous delivery and an iterative approach might make this step not required because you're not releasing anything. It's so small that the spec becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you're
So,
doing all those other things.
so we
If you're
feel
not, then.
okay about that step.
Yeah.
7.
Okay. So, number 8, do programmers have quiet working conditions? And he's not talking about quiet specifically, he's talking about ideal conditions where programmers aren't getting interrupted. Like, don't put your programmers next to the salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
and where they're going to hear loud conversations going on and get interrupted. Because he's saying it takes from research, it takes 15 minutes to get into flow state and really start cranking on code. And if you're sitting next to a salesperson, and any moment they might start yapping on the phone very loudly, it's going to be distracting.
Right.
In this post-COVID world, I'm not even sure that this one is up to the employer anymore. Like
Yeah,
the
it
like
can.
I
Yeah. In fact, when I was still living in an apartment last year, it was a small apartment. It was kind of loud. And so I actually ended up going and renting a co-working space just to get quiet. So it was important enough for me to pay for a separate place, even though I had my own room there, just because it was just I needed quiet.
yeah
And yeah, that's the my employer did not reimburse me. I didn't ask them to though. But however, um, you're right that it's not necessarily up to the employer anymore. Although yeah, that would be very nice to have a stipend.
yeah. Number 8, I feel like it's still very important to have
Yeah,
developers in their ideal condition, which what ideal means would vary from person to person. But I'm not sure that it's up to the employer anymore. Like, I don't think they can control it because
yeah.
everyone,
It's one of those number 7 style, like kind of mixed.
yeah,
It might apply and might not. But regardless, I 100% agree. If I don't have quiet and focus time, then I will write the dumbest code. Please
yeah.
leave me in a closet somewhere.
Which, to not to digress too far, but like my wife needs noise in the background. She turns on the TV and has something stupid on in the background so that she can concentrate. And I cannot concentrate the slightest like that.
Yeah,
And our brains just work differently.
totally. One of my best friends is like that. I do not understand it. And not only does it help him study, he understands, he'll remember the entire episode that was on TV while he's studying. So he's like somehow listening to it and still not like still digesting all the information he needs. I can't do that.
Yeah, I
So
can't do that
yeah.
either. Okay. Number 9. Do you use the best tools that money can buy?
That's a good one.
I have certainly worked at many companies where they would pay us a ton of money, pay developers a ton of money, and then give us the worst tools possible, like in just the worst laptops.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, if this is even like an Apple, like, did you get the highest end Apple versus the highest end Windows machine? Like, no, they would give us the cheapest Windows machines they could get, and like this, the time I'm wasting compiling on my local machine is more expensive than the machine after a week.
Yeah. Maybe I'm spoiled with this one too because like I will go. There's like you remember when you had dial up and it was like
Mm-hmm.
you were okay with that connection speed because that's all you got. And then
Yeah.
later you had cable when you went back to your friend's house who had dial up, and you're like, this is terrible. I'm so impatient. Please. It's like that kind of thing where you just like, you have a new standard now that you have like higher speed internet. The same thing happened to me recently where in my current job, I work with a lot of different Docker containers with different projects.
Hmm.
And after a while, they consume a fair amount of memory. This was kind of an older laptop I was using. This one actually had 16 gigs of RAM, which is a decent amount. But with all the different containers I was running, plus my IDE on top of it,
Hmm.
PHP Storm is pretty heavy consumer. Um, plus, Chrome and other kind of random things open. It was sluggish, and after a while, I actually started getting kind of like frustrated. Like I had to do memory management. I have to go spin down each of the different containers I
Hmm.
didn't need, use that, then swap back to the other things, spin up the containers that I needed, and it was just like remember to close all the programs you're not using kind of thing. Where I'm doing like all this extra stuff just because the computer is kind of getting slow over the years. It was from 2019, the computer,
Right.
Apple, and so I finally asked, "Hey, can I get a new computer?" And they said, "Yeah, yeah, sure. You've been here plenty of years, and that's an old laptop. Let's do it." Got a new one in 2023. Got the new what do you call the M3 chips? I forget the name of those.
I think they're
Um,
M2s,
M2,
M3.
M3. I don't know. Either way, the top of the line one from this
Yeah.
past year, and oh my god, is it fast! 32 gigs. I think it just came with 32 gigs standard, but it is comical how much more productive I am.
Yeah.
Everything runs so fast. There's no waiting. I don't get distracted. Like usually, the longer the computer takes, the more you get distracted, the more you have to kind of get back into gear because you have a
Yep.
context swap. It all adds up.
It
It
does.
is not. It is not a developer being like snobbish. I'm telling you, give them the good tools, and they will do good work. I got so much work done these past 2 weeks since I got this new laptop because it's just there's no hiccups. Please buy your programmers good tools.
One thing I've realized with this one, it goes beyond the tools. So, like, yeah, we're talking hardware and laptops, and I had a similar case where I had an older laptop. It was new when they gave it to me, and I've just been with the same
Yeah.
place for a while, and it got progressively slower as the software got bigger. But it also comes down to things like log aggregators
Mm,
or monitoring tools. Like there is definitely it's definitely a difference between, say, Datadog, who I love, and an open source implementation that you can run on cheap AWS hardware
right.
with minimal things. And it's like, oh, well, I spent 30 minutes poking around in the logs here looking for something because the search isn't as good and it's much slower than it would have taken me here.
Right.
And
That's up.
those are real.
So it's not even just hardware. Yeah, best tools, software even that money can
Mm-hmm.
buy is quite good.
Yeah. Okay, number 10. Number 10, I think, is going to be a little controversial. Do you have testers?
Mm,
So back in the day, I used to work with lots. There would be QA departments, and you do a project, and you'd get assigned a QA person, and they would QA your work. You'd work with them to do it, and they'd write the tests, and they would do the regression, and they would do all these things. And then over time, it became, oh, the QA department just wrote tests and ran the tests, and then their goal was to do as little manual testing as possible because they've automated it.
mm-hmm.
And at some point around 2010-ish, kind of the view flipped and people started getting rid of the QA departments and saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're just going to have developers and developers are going to write tests and that will be better. And it's regressed somewhat a little bit where there's a little bit of mix, but certainly dedicated QA people are much rarer today than I feel like they were when this was written.
Yeah, that's kind of fluctuated for me too. Um, I feel like for me around 2016 to 2020 was a
Mm-hmm.
whole like let's just automate it and get rid of it. But the last two places I've worked for wanted QA, had QA in house, and they caught a lot of things that developers didn't catch. There was just edge
Mm-hmm.
cases they didn't catch, business context that was a little more obvious to the QA testers. Um, I have been impressed lately with having in-house dedicated QA people. I mean, obviously, developers should do a good job doing due diligence of testing their own code too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like if you write a paper and you proofread it yourself, you're gonna. There's some things you're gonna be blind to because you wrote it, and if you give it to someone else, they're gonna catch it better.
Right. Writers have editors.
Right. So I think that's still necessary.
But his argument in this article was QA costs, because they're not developers and they get paid less, that having developers write tests was a waste of money when you could have a QA person write a test.
Ooh, don't
Which
agree with that. Yeah.
I don't think is true anymore.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, QA probably does get paid less, but I think in today's world with automated testing, there's a lot of value in having the developers write the tests because it creates the mental model and it gives them the immediate feedback, versus if I wrote the code with no tests and threw it over the wall and the QA person came back a couple weeks later and said, hey, these things that you wrote are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I came back, got back up to speed, fixed it, and got approved, I am fairly confident most of the time, if not all the time, would cost more than just having me write the tests. The cost savings aren't there.
To me, it's like a lack of diligence on your own part if you just like kick all your testing to someone else to do it for you. Like there's some basic testing every developer should be doing of their own code. It's it's like cleaning your like cleaning a place after you've stayed there for a night. Like just do some basic cleanup yourself before you have someone else come in and clean. That's don't be a dick. Plus, also, whenever you write your own tests, you end up catching your bugs before you send it to someone else to kick it back to you with the bugs that they definitely caught. So just kill the cycle at least one loop earlier, and just fix it yourself.
Yeah, I'd say developers should definitely write their own tests, and look at QA as a specialized kind of developer who specializes in bugs. Like I specialize in performance and scaling, and I look at code that other developers have written, and the code is fine. It does the thing correctly. But I'll look at it and be like, oh, that's an O to the n squared operation right there. You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Where they won't see it. And same with QA person. They will see problems that you won't.
Right. It's the same thing as you're like, how did the user do that? You're so baffled by how did they break that? QA people can find those things. Like you give it to someone and you say, try to break this thing. And you're a developer and you think you've caught every case, but you haven't. Or it's very rare that you have. So, please have someone else QA.
Yes. All right. Number 11. Do candidates write code during their interview? This is one that I feel like, it's like number one, source control. It's become so common. I don't know that it's even
you don't have to.
It's almost gone the other way. Like people write too much code during interviews, if anything.
Yeah. I haven't been a part of an interview in about a year, I think, or so. But yeah, the last time we were interviewing folks, we still have, depending on if they're front end, back end, or full stack, different kind of things to throw their way to help. But generally speaking, it's almost like a sanity check to make sure. It's kind of like with the fizz buzz thing, like a more intense fizz buzz. It's not like such an easy do a modulo kind of thing. But
I've had people fail FizzBuzz.
Yeah, which because people can BS their way through, especially because people are these days are oh, you can use ChatGPT to solve all your stuff on the fly and answer the interviewer's questions, which I don't know if that's true because I don't know how well that works. But either way, we still do a fair amount of the interview of just asking questions like, what would you do in this case? Mm-hmm. And people who are really experienced, like in React, for example, who ask somebody else who says they're experienced in React, oh, what did you think about the release of hooks and what kind of testing situation do you have set up there? And if they can't answer it very well, it's pretty, kind of like a telltale sign. It doesn't answer everything, but it helps paint the picture a little bit better. So I think
I don't know React. Like I know what it is, but that's about as far as I would go, and I have no idea about the things that you just asked about hooks and.
Yeah, and if I asked you, have you used Enzyme for your testing library, or not even phrase it that way? Just what do you think of the Enzyme library? Don't even say it's a testing library.
I've never used it.
they don't know it. Like not everyone has to know it, but generally speaking, people who have used a lot of React have used Jest and sometimes Enzyme. They at least would know about it. You'd think, and if not, you ask them another question just in case because you're like, that's weird. But yeah, you can get a pretty good way without having them write code in the interview. But I still think it's a pretty important part, just a sanity check. Can you code?
Yeah.
Are you just lying?
Yeah, I personally am move away from live code, right? Like, but more on the let's discuss your ability to think, which is
Yeah,
maybe a subjective and worse
I don't
kind
like the
of.
ones where the live code where we were like. I remember one of the last interviews I did. I actually had to go in person. Well, this is a couple of months ago. I had to go in person to a place and then write on a whiteboard how I would model something in front of like 7 people,
Hmm.
and that was really. I just kind of stumbled a lot because like I was nervous. There's 7 people watching me. That's not my normal programming environment, and I didn't even get an offer after that. I knew how to do what they were saying. It's just like I kind of choked performing in a way that I never
Yeah.
do on a daily basis. And I thought this is like an unfair way of doing that. To me, it felt unfair because like I know how to do this job. I just can't sell it well enough, and I had to work on how to sell myself better. You know, so I like the idea better whenever you go and pair with somebody, and that's what I've seen more recently. You and someone else who's basically like watching you, you try to discuss together how to solve the problem. They already know it. You're new and you're trying to, do the interview.
Hmm.
And so you just ask questions like you would a normal one, and then you open up Google or Stack Overflow, and you find, your answers like you would normally. Because in a lot of those other ones I went through, they're like, you can't ask questions, you can't Google it, you just have to sit there in front of us and do it. And you're like, that's not how anybody programs. Everyone goes to Stack Overflow. Like, come on, don't kid yourself.
Yeah, I remember in one of the last interviews I did, and we were due for another interview episode on interviewing at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the year. We'll do another one. But one of the last times I did it, somebody asked me, I don't even remember, it was powers or something. And they're like, how would you do this? And I'm like, well, I'd use the math library. But since you're asking, I'll do it by hand. But just so that you know, I know that there's a library that does this, and I would never do it by myself.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I can imagine now, like if you ask somebody like, how would you write like your own, login system? My
I
answer would be
wouldn't.
I wouldn't. I would totally not do that. And who would roll their own like today? Like use a tried and true, you know, tested open source framework for that or something like.
Yeah.
But if you can't explain it, I'm like, I've never had to do that because like I had to do that 10 years ago. But who would do that in the modern age? And I don't remember the best way to do that. I just use a library, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So
All right,
like that's
we're
your
off
answer.
topic.
No, we're on topic. It's number 11.
Number 12. Do you do hallway usability testing? This is a older way of saying do you dog food. Nowadays we call it dog food.
Mm.
Like the idea of hallway usability testing, if you had actually were near your coworkers and could grab one of them in the hallway,
Mm.
like,
Oh, I
hey, I
see.
just wrote this feature. I want you to use it coming in cold so that I can see whether or not it works.
Ooh, I like that.
So, similar to the dog food, you'd be like, hey, Isaac, you just updated the add a new bill form,
Hmm.
and you grab some rando developer or support person and say, hey, I just changed this form. I want to watch you go through it. So it's a combination of shadowing users and dog fooding. And this is the one that I generally have found people don't do throughout my entire career to this day. It's, if anything, gotten worse.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely haven't heard it called that. I've heard of dog fooding for sure, but I generally do like doing this because I like if I send something to Rebecca, I'm like, try this out, and then I'll like watch her go through and see how like what she clicks on or what doesn't make sense or like if the
Mm-hmm.
page hangs. You can have like Sentry has that built in now too, where you can watch somebody step through
Mm.
like a front end form, for example, and then you can see them spam clicking. Like they actually flag it as like essentially frustrated clicking because they can see how many times somebody clicks a button. So you can see that. It's super useful for painting that picture. I think that's a very necessary thing to have, especially for a brand new feature. Because as engineers, we look at things and go, that makes sense because we're thinking of things engineer hat on. So having somebody who doesn't have that context is the same thing from the earlier step about the QA, having
Yeah.
it with a fresh context.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was the 12 items in the test. And I think we aren't against any of them. I think we feel like a couple of them aren't relevant anymore. Or like, do you use source control and do you have candidates write code? Those have become so ingrained that I don't know that they're relevant anymore.
Yeah.
And then some of them, like daily builds, have become continuous integration.
Yeah. Some
Like,
have morphed into new terms, but same concept.
same concept.
Yeah, I don't like
The,
number one. I think we should go back to using USB thumb drives to we have to mail the new version of everything to everybody.
yeah, sneakernet, man. Especially with those long distance. Now that we're all remote.
Yeah, I think this holds up pretty well over time.
The only thing that I would want in there that isn't in there, and I think this again is relates to the shift from installed on prem to cloud software, is observability. There's nothing in here about can you get do you have logs? Can you aggregate the logs? Can you observe the system in real time? And that makes sense because if back in the day, most of the software was either going to be run in house or literally shrink wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
Those things weren't available, right? If I write a Windows app, I don't get logs. I might get a crash report, but I don't get I can't get logs and I can't get telemetry.
Right.
But now I think almost all software has that. Or let me phrase that: if you're running software on prem, if you are using the on prem software or it's in the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
then you should have observability logs, telemetry.
Right. There's no excuse not to have it these days.
Right. Yeah, the only acceptable excuse is I'm not allowed to have it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Fair.
But even then, I know that iOS apps send home tons of data, installed software. But who knows? All right.
Cool.
Did you notice anything that you would find missing from this list that you would want in a?
Oh, I haven't been thinking about that this whole time. I've just been thinking about the items and how to critique the current items, not what to add to it. No, I'll think about it, and then maybe we can reapproach it. We have a follow up next time. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
something there. Obviously, it's just like I don't want to make the listener wait for 30 seconds while I pause and analyze.
Yeah. Well, we can always do another episode. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.